Everybody's looking for that affordable EV, and those are not easy to find. Sure, some companies are coming out with them. Chevy Equinox just launched, Kia EV3. What about the one that's been here from the beginning? I'm talking about the Volkswagen ID.4. Now, is it affordable enough, and does it have the range and everything you need? Let's check it out. Love it. And welcome back to another Outsider View. My name is Pat, and we have Brian behind the camera. Funny enough, Brian did the 2023 ID.4, and this being the 2024, you might ask yourself, well, what's changed? Quite a bit, actually. Way more horsepower and torque, and some nice features on the inside. Now, as far as we go with trim levels, Volkswagen says that they have 3 trims. They have the entry, they have the S, and then they have the S Plus. You have a slew of options going from there. Choose your battery. You want the 62 kilowatt battery or the 82 kilowatt battery. Spoiler alert, most of the changes of 2024 factor in only if you take the 82 kilowatt battery. From there, you can choose all-wheel drive like we have here, or rear-wheel drive. That's right. Volkswagen has said they have gone to their previous days of having a rear-wheel drive Beetle. So even if you get all-wheel drive like we do here, we have the fully spec'd out Plus, and you still have a rear-wheel drive bias, and the all-wheel drive kicks in with the front motor as needed. Continue on to the rear. You also have a fully lit up Volkswagen logo, and that is something that's also was introduced last year, but the 2024 also has it. Here we are at the old charging port. Of course, DC fast charging doesn't have the North American charging standards quite yet. Volkswagen does have that agreement. For now, it can charge up to 175 kilowatts an hour, which means about 10 to 80%. DC fast charging will take you about 30 minutes. Now, before we go inside, I want to talk about something very particular. This vehicle is towing. Towing is actually rated at 2,700 pounds, which might not seem a lot for all you gas guzzlers, but as far as the EV segment, that's actually pretty good. Most EVs are about 1,000 pounds, 1,500 pounds. So that is definitely a pro when it comes to the ID.4. Now let's go inside. Inside the ID.4, there's obviously a lot of change, like I highlighted, but we're just going to start from over here. The windows, it's still a little bit annoying that there's not 4 toggles, only 2, and then you press the rear button to activate the rear window. Moving on for that, you got your light controls over here. It's, you know, tactile touch, and I'm not a big fan of it, but it does the job. Steering wheel, you still have the bezels here that a lot of people are not a big fan of. However, I think it's changed because you can depress down on them and you do feel some feedback. I've had 0 issues with the bezels on the steering wheel, contrary to what I'm hearing out there. Seems to be a big issue for some people. It is not for me. The screen, I actually like that there is a screen. It is pretty small for the driver cluster, but you know what? At least there's one there. And no, there is no heads-up display. So that is definitely something you miss out on. Again, we're talking about affordable EVs, and this is where I think the segment, you should not expect a heads-up display. Moving on, the shifter right here. It used to be up on the screen, and as you can see that I'm reaching out for it, I think this is a lot more ergonomical. You definitely have to still twist it back for reversing, forward for driving, and if you want a little bit more of a regen, you put it in B. So definitely a lot more ergonomic, not having to lean, and I have no issues using the shifter. It's actually quite intuitive. I like the shifter and I like the new placement. That's new for this year. Another thing that's new is look at this big screen, Brian. 12.9, so basically 13-inch screen. It's a massive screen. And a lot of updates went into that infotainment. A lot of reviews from last year were about the infotainment now. Listen here. Infotainment and navigation may not be a big deal for an internal combustion vehicle. This is an EV, and it's a big deal because you should always use the navigational system inside the vehicle. And that's why it was a big deal that it wasn't up to par in the previous model. I have used this one, and I can tell you it's very easy to use. If I want to navigate somewhere, check this out, Brian, it'll calculate your route fairly easy. And then you can go into your route settings. Do you want charging automatically? So it automatically schedule your charging, and you can also set up a how many kilometers, we're in Canada, kilometers, that you want to have when you get to your destination. I find that extremely convenient and it's really good. So they did a bang up job at designing this. It's way better than it previously was. It'll tell you where you need to charge, at what time, and what battery capacity you're going to have. It's very similar. However, I will say it's not as user friendly as the Google ones that are in other manufacturers. Volkswagen, you did a great job for this. I'm still going to rank it a little bit lower than the Google, but hey, second place is not all that bad. Moving on to the infotainment, I think it's a little bit busy, but once you get used to it, so this may seem a little bit overwhelming for you guys as you're looking at it, but once you get used to it, this is like your charging, this is your parking assist. Parking assist does work if your parking is very well, painted lines and everything is good. And even then, it probably won't capture 100% of the available parking spot. However, as you can see in this video, I utilized it and it was actually fairly fast and convenient, and it's pretty easy to use. Moving on, we do definitely have the modes and stuff like that. You can change all your settings through the screen because, as you can tell, this is a very minimalistic vehicle interior. So you have your interior, your exterior, and this is where you can have all your information, your driver data and your trip assistance. And if you want to reset your trip and so on, this is where you have to go through. A little bit of an annoying factor, especially for YouTuber like me that likes to reset the trips every time I take the vehicle, tax write-offs and all. But I like to do it right through this screen, and it was a bit of a pain to get used to that one. So yeah, it happens. But the infotainment is actually very busy, but it does have wireless Google, wireless Android Auto, and Apple CarPlay, which I'm a huge fan of because it goes in sync with the wireless phone charger down here. There's a little clip. I love this. It's very convenient, very easy to put it in and out, and it holds in place. No issues there. You got your massive cup holders. Big fan of. However, you don't have much of a pass-through underneath here. So I think storage, you got a lot of storage. This is a pretty decent size center console, but I think that they can go a little bit step more. We got a lot of dead space here that we can utilize. And that's where I think the Volkswagen crowd is going to be separating too. It's a minimalistic interior. So if you want more traditional look, this is probably not the vehicle for you. Another update in 2024 is the climate control. So climate control is a lot neater, a lot easier to use. And I like that there's this obviously never changing bar over here. And again, the sliders, you can use the sliders and they are backlit this year. Definitely a plus. Before you were just blindly going through and hoping you're tapping on the right one. So, and you do also have rear controls, and the rear passenger can also control their own temperature. Definitely key for this kind of vehicle, this size of vehicle. In this segment, you don't see that a lot, so I like that they incorporated it because my son likes it a little warmer than I do because I'm a bigger guy. Out here in the back seat, we got decent amount of leg room. I'm actually pretty comfortable and I can slide underneath the seats, which I always liked. And I'm actually sitting behind my sitting position, my driving position. And I like this little cell phone pocket. That's pretty cool. And of course you have the full-size pocket in the back. A little bit of piano black here on the side. Same thing we're talking about the door and the interior, and there's a little bit too much usage of piano black, but you get your own HVAC controls in the back and USB-Cs, as well as a cup holders. and you get a pass through. So if you want to open all this stuff and you have long items that like hockey sticks, that's a good feature to have. Now talk about trunk space. You're looking at 30 cubic feet in the back, and if you put all these seats down, about 64 cubic feet. Actually, that's a very good amount of space in the EV segment for compact SUVs. Let's take it for a drive. And welcome on board the ID.4, and let's punch it. 402 pounds-feet of torque, or plus, because they haven't rated yet the all-wheel drive. 0 to 60 in a 4.9 seconds, so 1 full second better than the previous year. Definitely got to be happy about that. So you can see that Volkswagen got the memo from the first edition they launched back in 2020. This vehicle was plagued with being a little bit boring to drive as far as EV goes. Now, if you're making a jump from internal combustion engine, you're gonna ask yourself, what were they talking about? This is definitely fun. But they were comparing it to other EVs, and that may have been true, but when you're looking at it this way, now this vehicle is faster than the new Chevy Blazer EV that just came out. We're looking forward to reviewing that one. But that being said, this vehicle is faster by a full second than the Blazer EV as well as its previous model, so the ID.4 2023. Big jump, right? But if we're looking at range, usually you sacrifice range when you jump with more acceleration, and that would be true. So the range here is a little bit less than its competitors. However, I'm quite happy with it. Here's the numbers. So the all-wheel drive variant, 263 miles of range or 423 kilometers. Rear-wheel drive, big battery pack, 291 miles and 468 kilometers. Now, if you go with the small entry level, with a small battery pack, 206 miles and 332 kilometers. If you're asking me what I get in real life, I get about 407 kilometers is what I've been able to get. And in miles, that's 253 miles. I'm quite okay with these numbers, but again, we're not going by only what I'm okay with, is what competitors are offering, and that does undercut a little bit what's out there. So it performs a little bit less as far as range than everything else. Not everything else, but a lot of its competitors. Everything else to do with the driving, the seat comfort is, definitely very supportive, and I love activating these massaging seats right here. I actually enjoy these massaging seats quite well. Some massaging seats I think are kind of like pointless, but this one actually, gets it going. Visibility is very good, and ride comfort, like I said, I'm very happy with. As far as basically soundproofing. The soundproofing is very good in this vehicle. I have very minimal road noise. There you go, got it. Very minimal road noise. And it's actually quite a nice, pleasant, comfortable ride, and it can be engaging when you need it to. The suspension is tuned okay. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the smoothest suspension, but it does the job just fine. And cornering is not an issue. I will talk a little bit about the IQ Drive. Now, this is the driver assist system. It's not as advanced as what else is out there, like Tesla full self-driving, or Blue Cruise, or Chevy Cruise, or Super Cruise, sorry, from General Motors and Ford, where you can go completely hands-free. This is not the case. You do need to put your hands on the steering wheel. It won't, do lane changes and stuff. But the park assist is pretty good, like I said earlier in the interior tour. Now, just to touch on again on the infotainment system, and more importantly, the map and navigation. It does a very good job. And like I said, all you need is you need the address to enter it, and then you're good, right? But it's not as advanced as the Google operating system, where the vehicles have the Google built in. and it won't be able to find certain commerce like just by entering the names of it. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying that it's not as good as the top navigation system, but it's better than other systems I've had out there. I'm thinking of the Nissan Ariya. I found that their system was a little bit outdated. This system actually does a very good job. It's very easy to plan the route and select chargers, or just for letting the system plan the route for you and find the chargers for you. But keep that in mind, that little inconvenience of having to perhaps look up for the address on Google Maps prior to entering it is very minimal, because how often are you doing road trips? Family vacations may be like a twice a year thing. So as a daily commuter, this is basically a non-factor. Now, if you're wondering how this handles, like compares to the competition, well, let's go talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about price. I did say this one was affordable for an EV. So what does it start at? It starts at $41,000 US and can go all the way up to $60,000. However, it does qualify for the full $7,500 rebate, which will definitely make a big difference because this is assembled in good old Chattanooga, Tennessee. For us in Canada here, it starts at $48,000 and can go all the way up to $65,000. And it does qualify, again, for the $5,000 federal rebate. So, case in point, this makes it a pretty affordable EV. And what are its competitors? Well, there's actually quite a few out there, but the entry level is where it becomes extremely affordable. But you do sacrifice some range, like I talked about earlier. You have the Nissan Ariya as a competitor, which has similar offerings, similar in range. However, the Nissan Ariya is a little bit more expensive. Also, you have the Korean twins, so the Kia EV6 and the Hyundai Ioniq 5 both beat the ID.4 as far as range. However, the cargo capacity is greater on the ID.4. Ford Mach-E is about the same story. And then you go on to the Chevy Blazer, which is pretty much the only one in that segment that will match this as far as cargo capacity. The difference between the Chevy Blazer and the Volkswagen ID.4 is very simple. The ID.4 beats it by a full second on a 0 to 60 time. So this one, it goes around 5 seconds, and the Chevy Blazer, can't believe I'll say that because its name is Blazer, you'd think it's really fast, but it's a 6 second 0 to 60 time, so a full second difference in between there, and that comes from the pounds-feet of torque, the 402 plus pounds-feet of torque that you get from this vehicle. Also, you're going to want to choose between the Blazer and EV. The Blazer uses the Google interface and a lot more buttons, and this one has a lot more minimalistic appeal to it. Looks a little bit more spacious, but reality, they're just as spacious. So you guys let me know in the comments which competitor do you think is closest to the ID.4. I personally think it is the Chevy Blazer. However, the Blazer, it does start at a more expensive price. There you have it. That's how this one is the more affordable EV in my opinion, my humble opinion. It's because the entry level is so cheap. It does qualify for the full rebate, and you still get a very good quality vehicle with some really good standard features. Let's summarize with our pros and cons as we usually do. I'm going to start with the cons just to switch it up. So range, it doesn't rank as high in range as its competitors. However, I mean, your average real-time use of range is about 407 kilometers, which I believe is about 250 something miles, which is not that bad. However, less than its competitors. Another con is the tactile buttons. Whether you're talking about the windows, for the rear windows, I have to push the rear button and stuff. And then the lights as well, the headlights, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. I find that just a pain to use. The last con is going to be about the interior. Now, I know some of you are absolutely in love with minimalistic interior, and that's obviously why they're designing it. I just find it a little bit too Tesla-like and a little bit boring in that sense. However, yes, it does give you a nice little open feel and a nice, you know, open space kind of a feel to it. So it's a con for me, but may not be for you. Now let's get to the pros. Well, I'm gonna start with towing. Towing 2,700 pounds for an EV is actually really good. Price value. This is a very good value buy for the features you get at the price range that you get. If you guys go look on build and price, you'll see that it's a spec higher than its competition as far as what you get for the price. Lastly, the cargo space of it and overall functionality, right? It's got that pass through, it's got a lot of space, a lot of cargo room, and it's definitely an ideal vehicle, an ideal EV for a family. But you guys let me know, what do you like about this car? What do you not like about it? Definitely, I'm okay with the range, even though it's not as much as what the competitors offer. And I'm definitely okay with learning to use the infotainment. It's definitely improved quite a bit. But I want to hear from you guys. Is this top of your list, or is this a vehicle that you're going to pass on? And if so, write us why. We'd like to know why, so we can actually get the feedback and learn that way of what you guys, the real people, the consumers, are actually thinking. Brian and I read every single comment and we always reply. Also, before we leave, I want to talk about what I'm wearing. Mad Hatter Industry hat and shirt. Now, we don't have any sponsors on this channel. It's one of the things that we are very proud about doing. This is not about money. This is about giving consumer the information they need. Mad Hatter Industry is owned by a friend of mine, Corey, and he does so much for the military community. Brian and I are both veterans, and we take it to heart, everything they do. He puts in so much money into the community. He helps out every other veteran-owned industry out there or company. And he does this not because he's rich, because he's not. He's very humble and he's just a good man altogether. So check out Mad Hatter Industry if you like the swag I'm wearing and if you want to support the veteran community. That pretty much sums up our video for today. Brian and I are going to sign off. But check out our other videos, and until next time, we'll see you later. The last con. Brian, what was my last con? Now let's talk a little bit about numbers, some little pricing going on. So the ID.4 entry starts at $41,000 in the US and can go all the way up to $60,000.